Welcome back to Zodiac Talks Tarot, where we explore the deeper layers of astrology, psychology, and spiritual growth with the same curiosity that Sagittarius brings to every road trip, late-night conversation, and questionable life choice that somehow becomes a life lesson. Today, we are diving into a topic that has been echoing across astrological research, mythological symbolism, and even the quiet halls of Buddhist philosophy: Sagittarius and the shockwave comeback that no one, not even you, saw coming. And before we get into it, let me greet you properly. If you're new here, settle in. If you've been with this channel for a while, you already know how we do things: thoughtful insight, a little cosmic humor, and a deep respect for the mysteries of the human spirit. Now let's begin. Sagittarius, if you're listening right now, take one slow breath. Drop your shoulders, unclench your jaw, and let your mind step aside for a moment so your instinct, the ancient, nomadic compass inside you, can take the lead. I've spent decades studying the patterns of the zodiac, the psychology of transformation, the archetypes that weave through storytelling, and the philosophies that shape spiritual traditions. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that Sagittarius does not merely endure turmoil. Sagittarius studies the storm, names it, makes friends with the lightning, and somehow walks out of the chaos with a lesson, a tan, and a story so wild everyone assumes you're exaggerating. What you're stepping into now is not just another chapter, not another moment of growth in the generic self-help sense. You're entering a cycle that feels like the universe has been slowly rearranging furniture behind your back, preparing your life for a reveal you didn't know you were auditioning for. It's a mixture of cosmic timing, deep psychological evolution, karmic closure, and that signature Sagittarian luck that strikes at the exact moment you've already given up and started making backup plans involving moving to another country. This moment is what I call your shock timeline. It is the comeback arc nobody predicted, the phoenix moment wearing denim, determination, and that trademark Sagittarian humor that somehow manages to be both philosophical and slightly dangerous. And I'm not telling you this as someone spinning mystical poetry, I'm speaking as a researcher who has watched the same cycle repeat in Sag after Sag after Sag. When everyone assumes the archer is sinking, that's exactly when you begin to rise. Now, let me share a truth that most people overlook: Sagittarius rarely announces their turning point, they become it. All the other signs might broadcast their transformations with dramatic declarations, new hairstyles, or elaborate 3-page explanations on social media. But Sagittarius? No. When a Sag is about to transform, the first sign isn't fireworks, it's silence. And if you know Sagittarius well, you know silence is never defeat. It is strategy. It is incubation. It is the soul's way of creating space for a new trajectory. The world often mistakes your quietness for giving up, but in reality, it's you pulling the arrow back, building tension, lining up a shot that no one around you expects. When Sagittarius stops talking, the universe leans in, because something is forming, something precise, powerful, and unusually intentional for a sign that usually improvises through life with good instincts and questionable planning. This quiet phase you've been in recently, this distance, this clarity, this sudden shedding of people, habits, and versions of yourself has not been random. It's a psychological and spiritual process I've seen countless times in charts and case studies. It's the moment where the former self begins dissolving to make room for the emergent self. Think of it like molting, except less glamorous and involving far fewer feathers. Though honestly, if Sagittarius did sprout wings one day, no astrologer would be surprised. And make no mistake, the self that's emerging will unsettle a few people. Not because you're trying to shock them, but because your evolution exposes their lack of perception. Quite a few individuals in your life built an entire narrative around the idea that you were stuck, broken, distracted, defeated, or too overwhelmed to rise again. They mistook your pause for paralysis. They mistook your reflection for retreat. They confused your recalibration for resignation. And in classic Sagittarian fashion, you let them think whatever they wanted, because correcting them would have required energy you simply refused to waste. Here's the part that makes me smile as a longtime researcher of this sign: while they were busy underestimating you, you were quietly rebuilding. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with the steady determination of someone sharpening a blade in a dark room. Sagittarius doesn't need announcements. Sagittarius needs alignment. And recently, whether you noticed or not, things in your inner world have been clicking into place. Old beliefs have cracked open. Old wounds have lost their emotional charge. Old relationships have faded into the background with the gentle finality of a chapter closing. You're not the person you were even 6 months ago. Psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, you've shifted into a different gear. And this isn't the temporary adrenaline-fueled optimism you sometimes use to talk yourself into reckless decisions. This time, your clarity doesn't wobble. Your instincts don't contradict each other. Your purpose isn't fuzzy. And because of that, you're moving differently, more quietly, more intentionally, more sharply. There's something else I've observed repeatedly among Sagittarians undergoing this transformation. The internal distance from your former self is not sadness, not numbness, not confusion. It's detachment in the truest, most spiritual sense. Buddhists call it re-seeing, the moment when your soul gently taps you on the shoulder and says, "We're done with that version of you. Let's go." And you don't argue with it. You feel the truth of it in your bones. The beauty of this moment, Sagittarius, is that you're not just heading toward a new chapter. You're heading toward a new identity, one shaped not by survival, but by wisdom. Not by chaos, but by clarity. And while the world may not be ready for the comeback you're about to make, that has never stopped you before. If anything, you've always enjoyed catching people off guard. So today, on Zodiac Talks Tarot, we're exploring the rise no one predicted, the metamorphosis you didn't ask for but desperately needed, and the cosmic timing that has positioned Sagittarius for one of the most powerful comebacks of the year. Settle in, because this journey is just beginning, and you're about to see what happens when the archer stops wandering long enough to aim with purpose. For years, I've watched the sky the way some people watch the stock market, always tracking the subtle fluctuations, the long arcs, the unmistakable patterns that reveal where a person is headed before they realize it themselves. And right now, Sagittarius, every cosmic indicator is pointing to a seismic internal shift, the kind that doesn't just nudge your life forward but rewrites the entire operating system beneath your personality. You are standing inside a pressure-forged ascension cycle, and while that phrase sounds dramatic enough for a sci-fi movie trailer, it's the most accurate way to describe what's happening to you. Let me explain this in the same tone I'd use at 2 a.m. in a half-empty diner, coffee cooling between us, while you ask why your life suddenly feels like the opening chapter of an unexpected memoir. The first force behind this transformation is Pluto, a planet that has never been accused of subtlety. Pluto doesn't whisper, suggest, or politely request change. Pluto shows up like a cosmic contractor who walks into your inner world, looks around, and says, "We're tearing this down to the studs." If you felt disoriented, cracked open, or strangely quiet inside, that's Pluto handing you the emotional equivalent of a renovation permit. This kind of energy either dilutes a person or distills them, and Sagittarius doesn't come into this life to be watered down. You're built for ignition, not erosion. Pluto is burning off anything flimsy or outdated so you can step into a version of yourself that's sharper, more intentional, and far harder to knock off course. Then we have Mars, the planet that refuses to wait for you to finish your excuses. Mars is the inner command that says you've analyzed enough, apologized enough, carried enough emotional luggage to fill an airport baggage carousel. It's time to move. If you've noticed yourself becoming more direct, more efficient, or more unwilling to engage in pointless conversations, that's Mars doing you a favor. Mars strips away hesitation the way a novelist cuts unnecessary chapters clean, decisive, final. And when Sagittarius becomes selectively silent, the world tends to pay attention, because your quiet is never empty. It's loaded with intent. Meanwhile, your ruling planet, Jupiter, is doing what Jupiter always does, expanding your life with the enthusiasm of that one Sagittarius friend who thinks a spontaneous road trip across 3 states is a reasonable plan for a weekday afternoon. Jupiter doesn't deal in tiny breakthroughs or mild improvements. When Jupiter opens a leap portal, it means life is about to accelerate in ways that feel both exhilarating and slightly suspicious, like the universe is up to something big. But the key difference in this cycle is alignment. These leaps aren't impulsive. They're guided. They're the kind of opportunities that appear only when your inner world has finally caught up to the size of your destiny. And finally, the nodes of fate are rewriting your storyline with the precision of an editor who isn't afraid to cut entire characters from the plot. When the nodes activate your axis, certain people drift away, chapters close abruptly, and clarity arrives in sharp, undeniable flashes. This isn't chaos even though it might feel like it. It's a cosmic red pen crossing out anything that can't evolve with you. Think of it as spiritual editing, removing the filler to reveal the masterpiece underneath. You're not losing things because your life is falling apart. You're losing them because your soul is making room for the version of yourself that has been quietly forming beneath the surface. Taken together, these forces create a kind of cosmic equation that explains exactly why your energy feels so different right now. Pluto is stripping you down to authenticity. Mars is pushing you into motion. Jupiter is lifting you into expansion. And the nodes are redirecting you toward the path that was always yours, even when you didn't feel ready for it. And yes, it may feel dramatic, inconvenient, or downright exhausting at times. But every major Sagittarian transformation begins this way: pressure, clarity, motion, and then a leap so perfectly timed that people around you start asking whether you somehow planned it all. You didn't plan it, of course. But you were built for it. For years I've watched the way Sagittarius moves through life, and one of the most fascinating patterns I've observed both in astrological charts and in real human behavior is how other people instinctively react when a Sagittarian begins to shift internally. It's almost comical, in the way cosmic humor tends to be. You barely say a word, yet suddenly people you haven't heard from in months, sometimes years, start thinking about you, talking about you, or quietly orbiting your online presence as if you won an award they weren't invited to celebrate. And this is something Sagittarians secretly enjoy, even if they'd never admit it out loud. Whenever your energy changes, others feel it before you do. Especially the individuals who once underestimated you, misread your silence, or confidently predicted your downfall as though they had insider information on your life. They didn't. They simply misunderstood your quiet seasons. Psychologically, what they're experiencing is energetic dissonance and uncomfortable tension between the outdated story they carry about you and the undeniable evolution occurring within you. Spiritually, we might call it recognition, that instinctive awareness that someone has stepped onto a new vibrational frequency. Cosmically, if we were being honest, it's a big universal oops, because your rise isn't faint or subtle. It's happening across multiple layers of your being, emotional, intellectual, karmic, and inner spiritual. Those who assumed your fire was fading are now feeling the warm breeze of a flame they thought had gone out, and it's shaking them in quiet, private ways. I've noticed this phenomenon for decades. When Sagittarius goes silent, people start watching. When Sagittarius begins healing, people start remembering their own part in your journey, sometimes with nostalgia, sometimes with guilt, sometimes with a sudden urge to check in. And when Sagittarius begins rising again, People start regretting the narratives they once formed about you. It's predictable and yet strangely poetic. Some individuals will start lurking in the shadows of your social media, pretending their late-night visits to your profile are entirely coincidental. They aren't. Humans are spiritually intuitive long before they are honest. But the funny part is that Sagittarians possess a kind of cosmic radar. You sense these energetic shifts before anyone even thinks they're hiding them well. In truth, nothing gets past a Sagittarius who has been paying attention. Now, let's talk about what you've recently experienced not as loss, but as initiation. It's easy for the human mind to interpret endings as failures, departures as abandonment, and silence as rejection. But from a psychological and spiritual perspective, what you've gone through is a process of refinement. You weren't losing people, you were losing illusions about who they were and what role they were meant to play in your future. You weren't losing opportunities, you were shedding limitations disguised as possibilities. And you weren't losing confidence, you were dropping outdated versions of yourself that simply couldn't accompany you into the next chapter of your life. In Buddhist philosophy, there is a concept known as the moment of re-seeing, a quiet instant when the mind becomes still enough to perceive truth without distortion. Sagittarius has been living in that space lately. You've been re-evaluating, re-understanding, and reorienting your path with a kind of clarity that arrives only after deep internal shifts. Everything that has fallen away did so because it was no longer aligned with who you are becoming. It wasn't taken from you as punishment or misfortune, it was released because it would have anchored you to a timeline that cannot contain the magnitude of your next evolution. Sagittarius is not losing. Sagittarius is shedding. And there is a very big difference. After decades of studying charts, behavioral patterns, mythic archetypes, and the psychological rhythms that guide human transformation, I can say with certainty that Sagittarius possesses one of the most unmistakable comeback signatures in the Zodiac. It isn't subtle, it isn't predictable, and it certainly isn't polite. If there's a universal law woven through astrology, mythology, and even modern psychology, it's that Sagittarius rises at the exact moment the world has mentally written them out of the script. Other signs bounce back, Sagittarius catapults. Other signs rebuild, Sagittarius reinvents. And while some people return merely restored, a Sagittarian comeback feels more like a plot twist authored by someone who decided the story needed more fire in the final act. Part of the confusion people have about Sagittarius comes from their misinterpretation of your traits. Your optimism gets mistaken for naivete, as if seeing possibilities somehow disqualifies you from understanding risks. Your silence is often misread as defeat, when in reality it's the sound of your inner archer pulling back the bowstring. Your kindness is labeled softness, even though it's one of the toughest spiritual muscles a person can develop. And your humor, your famous Sagittarian humor, gets dismissed as carelessness, when it's actually one of the most sophisticated coping tools in the human emotional toolkit. But people forget that Sagittarius has walked through enough storms to earn a lifetime supply of wisdom. You have endured transitions, endings, betrayals, and unexpected reversals that would have snapped the spine of someone with less resilience. Yet you never simply survive, you transmute. Where some crumble, you expand. Where some retreat, you explore. And where some cling to bitterness, you convert experience into clarity. This is why your evolution unsettles people, not because you failed them, but because you outgrew the limited version of you they constructed in their minds. Your growth demands they confront two uncomfortable truths: they misjudged your capacity, and they were evaluating you based on a chapter that wasn't meant to define your story. Your comeback isn't an act of revenge or vindication. It isn't a theatrical performance or a social media announcement. It's sacred work, karmically timed and spiritually anchored. You're not rising to prove anything, you're rising because your spirit refuses to stay where it no longer belongs. That kind of comeback is not just dramatic, it's destiny-driven. And as any seasoned researcher of astrology and human behavior will tell you, such a comeback isn't random. It announces itself in subtle, unmistakable signs long before the breakthrough becomes visible. One of the clearest markers is a strange inner calm that settles over you even when your life is objectively unstable. This calm isn't emotional numbness, it's alignment. It's the quiet recognition that the deeper part of you already knows how things will unfold. You also stop explaining yourself, not out of defeat but out of a newfound clarity that no longer seeks external validation. Your boundaries grow firmer, yet kinder, sculpted not from defensiveness but discernment, like a warrior monk who knows when to draw the sword and when to sit in silence. Your dreams may become more vivid, with old faces resurfacing like echoes of unfinished karmic conversations. This is the psyche clearing spiritual residue. You may feel completely finished with outdated versions of yourself, not out of bitterness, but simply because they no longer feel true. A restlessness may grow inside you, a desire for new landscapes, ideas, and experiences. This is Jupiter, your ruling planet, activating your expansion axis, urging you toward the next horizon. And beneath it all, you sense a breakthrough approaching with the same certainty you sense a storm before it appears over the ridge. Sagittarius intuition rarely guesses, it recognizes. So if you find yourself in this state of calm readiness, quiet detachment, and subtle excitement, understand this: you are stepping into your acceleration phase. And when Sagittarius accelerates, the universe tends to take notes. After spending a lifetime studying the inner workings of astrology, psychology, and the subtle ways human beings evolve, I can say there is nothing quite like witnessing a Sagittarius experiencing an internal shift. It's equal parts inspiring, dramatic, philosophical, and, in true Sagittarian fashion, unintentionally comedic. Because when a Sagittarius starts feeling something stir deep inside, you can practically set your watch by the sequence of events that follows. First, you'll be up at 3 in the morning googling spiritual awakening symptoms, as if the internet can diagnose the sudden sense that your life is expanding faster than your ability to keep up. Next, you'll start browsing international travel options, randomly deciding that maybe life would make more sense if you lived in Portugal or Nepal or some remote island where no one expects you to respond to emails. And finally, you'll oscillate between thinking you're becoming a visionary genius or suspecting you're slowly losing your grip on reality. The truth is less dramatic but far more empowering: you're not losing your mind, you're shedding dead timelines. Layers of the old self are simply falling away, making room for a version of you that feels more authentic than anything you've ever lived before. That impulse to move across the world is still completely on brand. Of course, Sagittarius has never needed much of an excuse to expand their environment. But let's set the humor aside for a moment, because beneath the laughter and late-night overthinking, something profound is happening. Buddhist philosophy teaches that suffering is not a punishment but a refinement, a process that burns away confusion and leaves only clarity behind. Sagittarius has been walking through this fire for some time now, and instead of crumbling under the weight of challenge, you've crystallized into a sharper, wiser version of yourself. You didn't harden, you deepened. You didn't break down, you broke open. You didn't lose faith, you lost illusions. Each difficulty, each ending, each uncomfortable transition has carved away the unnecessary, leaving behind a spirit with more purpose, more integrity, and more depth than before. You're entering what I often call the harvest season of the archer, a cycle where karma begins to move in your favor, not because you demanded it, but because you've earned it through resilience, honesty, and the willingness to grow even when it felt easier to remain the same. In this season, opportunities begin aligning faster than you expect, and the right people start appearing at the exact right moment. Your confidence becomes genuine rather than performative. Your intuition steps into the role of quiet guide, and your internal fire stops scattering in 10 directions at once. Instead, it narrows, focuses, and burns with intention. This isn't about proving others wrong, it's about proving your soul right. All the ways you hoped you could grow are beginning to take shape in ways that feel guided rather than forced. And the world, whether ready or not, is about to witness a version of you that even you haven't fully met yet. This next chapter is not subtle. You are stepping into a deeper sense of purpose, one that anchors your decisions and steadies your emotional landscape. You're gaining influence, not through persuasion, but through clarity. Your understanding of who deserves access to you becomes sharper, more selective, less apologetic. And most importantly, you're moving toward a timeline that has been calling your name for years, a timeline in which you live not from fear or obligation, but from alignment and expansion. People will notice the shift. They will talk. Some will remember that they underestimated you, and others will wish they had stayed closer. None of this is your concern. Their reactions are their karmic homework, your only job is to keep walking. As someone who has analyzed thousands of charts and watched countless Sagittarians rise from ashes that were never meant to bury them, I can say with certainty that your destiny arc is in full activation. You didn't arrive at this moment by luck or coincidence. You arrived because every choice, every challenge, every loss, and every curiosity pulled you forward. Sagittarius rises last, but rises highest, and the energy surrounding you now is the unmistakable beginning of that ascent. If you feel this message somewhere between your ribs, that tender place where intuition and excitement meet, trust it. Your comeback isn't on its way. It has already begun. And while the world may not be ready for what you're about to become, you absolutely are. So, Sagittarius, enjoy your life. Not someday, not when things settle, not when you've figured everything out. Enjoy it now. Your spirit is built for exploration, for truth, for laughter, for experiences that remind you how vast and generous this world can be. Lean into the adventure. Trust where you're headed. Celebrate how far you've come. And if you found insight, comfort, or a spark of recognition in this message, be sure to like the video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to my channel, Zodiac Talks Tarot. Your journey is unfolding beautifully, and I'm honored to walk alongside you.